look at the betting as we have it on matchbook.com for the 120 on Saturday, Nathaniel Lacey Novices Hurdle. And we take a look at the betting. Good Land is currently the 3.95 favourite on the Matchbook Betting Exchange, a bit bigger than the sports books at the moment. Quai de Paris 6.0, well fancied for the Willie Mullins team recently. We've all been caught. The British runner 6.4, Standard Clegane 7.4, American Mike 7.6, Grange Clare West 8.6, and 18.0, and bigger the rest. So, Dan, we'll head this over to you. I mean, this is so competitive. Just looking at some of those horses available at 7, 8, 9.0 on the Matchbook Betting Exchange, I guess shows the depth of this race. But you do like the favourite.
Yeah, this is a brilliant race. Like, what a race to kick it off with. Unlike a few, obviously, we were talking about some short price favourites, but this one is wide open. Obviously, you've got the likes of Quai de Paris, who is still very much an unknown quantity, really. Obviously, he's been well backed in recent days, I think, for the Paul Town and Willie Mullins connection. Understandably, they clearly hold him in very high regard. American Mike, Grange Clare West on recovery missions, really. There's just so many in this race you can make a valid case for, but I really did like Good Land over Christmas, over this track. I just was really taken by that performance, jumped well out in front, and quickened very stylishly under a Hands and Hills ride that day. It wasn't the plan to make the running, but I think in the end, the way the race panned out, they were almost forced to do so. Obviously, the fourth in that race was Embassy Gardens, who obviously has bolted up comfortably since, and now is right at the top of the Albert Bartlett market. In fact, I actually backed Good Land for the Albert Bartlett after Leopardstown the last day. I didn't even get an entry, so that shows how shrewd I am in that regard. But he's a horse I have a lot of time for. I think over 2 miles 6 on good ground is pretty much what his ideal conditions, really. They said after the race he's all about stamina. And supposedly, from what I've heard, like, he isn't far behind Marie Nationale in terms of how he works at home. And obviously he's a very good benchmark and sits second favourite for the Supreme. So while he is shorter than I'd like, I can see him drifting slightly. So I wouldn't be backing him now. But I think if he gets to about 4.5, I might be tempted then.
Yeah, Dan, you mentioned the entries and not in the Ballymore, Donn, and that's put me off a little bit of Good Land, because this race does tend to go to an Albert Bartlett winner, because just for those that don't know, it was 2 mile 4 furlongs, and then I think the Dublin Racing Festival came in. So for the last 4 editions, it's been ran over 2 miles 6, which seems to suit an Albert Bartlett type horse.
Yeah, no, exactly, Daniel. It's it can be a good pointer to the Albert Bartlett, but to be honest, I'm surprised Good Land is favourite. Like, I put him up as a horse to follow after he won at Leopardstown, thinking that he could be an 8 or 10 to 1 shot for this. And look, you can understand why he was very good that day, as Dan said. The time of the race was, I think, 3 seconds fast. There were 2 other hurdle races run over the same course and distance on the day, and he was 3 seconds faster than both of them, including She Wears It Well. She won the mare's race, and Charles Burns' horse finished 4th in the Lanzarote hurdle. He won the other one. So it was a good performance. It was only his maiden hurdle. It was only his only I suppose his only completion. Well, his only run, really, because he unseated at his first run. And Barry Connell's horse he's just enjoying a tremendous season in company with Michael O'Sullivan, who's very good. Like, he was able to claim £5 in the maiden hurdle. Obviously, he's not able to claim £5 in the Grade 1. I wouldn't worry too much about that. Like, he rode Marie Nationale to win the Royal Bond Hurdle, the Grade 1 race as well. So he's a very, very capable, very talented young rider. So I wouldn't worry about any of that, trainer or jockey for Good Land. But I just think he's short for what he's done. I was surprised that Paul Townend chose to ride Quai de Paris in front of Grange Clare West. So that's obviously a big pointer to Quai de Paris, who looked very good at Tremor in winning his maiden hurdle on probably ground that's different. It was heavy ground that day on New Year's Day. It's going to be better. And it's going to be interesting to see how the ground rides, because it is going to be better ground, and they're watering a lot, so it should be hopefully good, safe National Hunt ground. Sander Clegane comes into it as well. But yeah, I'm just thinking Grange Clare West is a big enough price, and that he could bounce back. Like, he's held in really high regard. He was sent off a short price favourite for the Grade 1 race at Naas, the last day, the Lawless of Naas race. He came back. It wasn't his running. He coughed a couple of times after the race, reportedly. So it's interesting that Willie Mullins is running him here. And he's a really classy horse. He's bred for stamina as well. He should appreciate the step up to 2 miles 6. And it's not ideal that Paul Townend isn't riding him, or has chosen to ride Quai de Paris instead. But Danny Mullins rode Manella Cooner to win this race last year, and Paul Townend chose to ride Bronze. So and we're probably going to see a little bit of that throughout the weekend. That the Willie Mullins #1 may not necessarily be the one who does best in the race. So I just think that maybe the market has overreacted a little bit to Paul Townend not riding Grange Clare West. And as we've discussed before, Daniel, it's a jockey can only ride one horse. It's either it's 1 or 0. There aren't degrees of what he's going to ride. We don't know how close a call it was for Paul Townend, but I'd say it might have been close enough, and I think Range Clare West might run his odds.
Yeah, it's one of those where you don't know if it was a 100% decision or a 55-45 call. So it's a good point made by Donn. Charlie, over to you. And I mentioned a lot of the English coming over. I was referring, of course, to the fans. I think 1 in 5 tickets, at least at the early stage, were bought by fans. But you're putting up one of, I think, I didn't check the Sunday decks, but I didn't check it for that race, but I think it's 1 of 2 runners this weekend, British runners. We've all been caught.
Yeah, I think there might be 3 runners, is there? I think Alan King brings one over, and Phil Kirby brings one over in the handicap as well. So yeah, a select pool, but like you say, British punters going over in their droves. And I agree with what Donn says. I think they're probably very talented horses, but you can pick holes in a few at the top of the market of what they have done up to now. And I can see the case with Range Clare West. I also think for sure with Paul Townend, with the quality of Willie Mullins' stable, I'd say a lot of these calls that he's making, 60-40 calls, 55-45, as in. And it's not going to be easy. And I'd say there's going to be a few occasions where he's definitely going to get it wrong over the weekend. But yeah, I came down with We've All Been Caught. I mean, I think he's been slightly underestimated by the market. He won a point-to-point in Ireland. He was an expensive horse, I think 210,000 from the sales. He bumped into Hermes Allen in November. No disgrace in that. Probably Britain's leading contender for the Ballymore. And then the form of his race with Rock My Way was boosted last weekend with Rock My Way winning a Grade 2 there for Sid Hussey. He's a really uncomplicated, strong, staying, galloping horse. I think the boys have mentioned about this being more of an Albert Bartlett trial, and from what Sam Twiston-Davies has said, I think that's definitely where this horse is planning to end up. And he's just really likeable, and like I say, he has graded form in the book already. And I just think at the prices, he's maybe been ever so slightly underestimated.
Yeah, I kind of struggled myself in this race. This is probably the most competitive Grade 1, maybe outside the Irish Arkle this weekend. But Sander Clegane made my shortlist. But I am going to go with Cato Paris. Like, there was definite serious confidence behind this horse in Tremor, serious amount of money. And while he wasn't necessarily visually impressive, the more you look at it, you could argue he does look a little bit more of an Albert Bartlett type. Obviously, the booking of Paul Townend, as Donn touched on, has kind of reduced the price. But there seems to be a lot of confidence with this horse, and the Willie Mullins stable don't tend to miss too much in that regard. So it would be a tentative selection for Cato Paris based on his Tremor run, but also I think he'll come on a lot for that run. And the 2 miles, 6 furlongs, I think this track might suit him too. So 4 different selections there, and I've also touched on another one, so you can kind of make a case for a lot of these horses. But we'll move on to the next race, which isn't as competitive. It is the Spring Juvenile Hurdle at the 155 11%, and take a look at the betting that we currently have on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. Lossiemouth, very impressive this season. It's 1.38. Galan Marcoux, 5.8. Augusta Win, 15.0. Tiaco, 16.5, potentially aimed at the Boodles, perhaps. Ascending, 22.0 and 50.0, and Bigger the rest. I don't want to spend too long in this race, guys, because myself, Charlie, and Donn have put up Lossiemouth. We'll have a lot of time to talk about other competitive races. But Dan, you haven't done a without bet here. You've gone for a win place bet.
Yeah, and I guess it's just the structure of the race that swayed me that way. Like, I have nothing against Lossiemouth. Like, she's the right favourite. Completely understand why she's the price she is. I guess the only comments would be that she's run in 2 very slowly run races thus far. If Blood Destiny was here, that would really put the cat amongst the pigeons from a pace angle. But with the way the race is shaping, I just see it hard to see Garland Marceau out of the free. And that's kind of my logic for going down this route. Obviously made a great debut behind Lossiemouth the last day. Came with a very decent reputation from France too, not far behind Lossiemouth by all accounts. Pulled too hard, jumped pretty poorly as well, but still pulled well clear of the remainder last time out on her Irish debut, chasing Lossiemouth over that 7 lengths behind. There's definite improvement to come there. Danny Mullins is on. I just wonder, with a lack of a clear pace angle from what I can see, whether she might make the running. Given that she pulled quite hard last time out, obviously we know Danny Mullins from the front as well, how expert he can be there. Lossiemouth will want a target to aim at. So I can see that race panning out from that sense. And we know juveniles can just improve at drastically different rates. Like, she kind of reminds me a bit of Farclas from a few years ago. Obviously, I know a different gender and everything, but I think Farclas made his debut in the same race. Garland Marceau did. They both ran here. Farclas finished second, and then he went on to win the Triumph. Like, I think she's got the molds of that, where I think she's quite a strong stayer at the trip as well. So I just think in a race where a few really don't have much of a chance, like the Takawa looking at the Fred Winter in time, I just see it hard to keep her out of the free. If she gets an uncontested lead out in front and jumps better, she might give Lossiemouth something to think about.
Okay, yeah, there's an alternative to the favourite. Again, I don't want to spend too long, Don, but briefly on Lossy Meta, maybe that case that Dan made on this race.
Yeah, like again, it's pretty straightforward for me. I think Lossy Meta, she looks like the outstanding juvenile this season. She's been very good in both her runs so far for Willie Mullins, and I think she deserves to be a short price favourite. She's long odds on. She's not a bet for me, but it's an interesting race. Interesting, as Dan said, how Gallimar Cow will go. Takao, I thought Takao did well to win the last day because he was a wee bit keen through the early stages. Mark Walsh didn't panic when Ascending came up on his outside and he went on. He probably won with a wee bit more in hand than the half-length winning margin. Ascending reopposed as well. He ran a nice race too. I think he was a Clive Cox in Britain. Got to a rating of in the 90s on the flat. And the two of them pulled nicely clear. So Ascending, Henry de Bromhead's horse, should progress from that. Interesting that Takao is wearing a hood for the first time as well. So he could come forward a wee bit from his run. But yeah, it's an interesting race with a view, an eye to the future. But yeah, I think Lossy Meta is by some way the most likely winner.
Yeah, Charlie, anything to add about Lossy Meta?
No, not really. I mean, like, you know, she looks outstanding. The vibes and the word has been that she is, and she's got a perfect race record to boot. I think, like the lads have already alluded to, that there's probably going to be some interesting horses in there with Fred Winters and whatever else in mind. But I'd be very surprised if she doesn't win tomorrow.
Yeah, the interesting gust of wind is entered here. Maybe the LA de Tom of this year's juvenile, perhaps. But we will move on to the 2:30 in Leopardstown. And this is, to be honest with you, race of the season contender, let alone this weekend. We've got a appreciated 2.64 Dysart Dino, who was long anti-post favourite, is now the second favourite based on jockey bookings 4.1, El Fabiola 7.2, Banbridge 8.6, Saint Wat 13.5, Phildor 15.5, and you've got horses like Flame Bear at 23.0, and Visionarian, who's I think a really good horse, 50.0. So look, Don, set up this race for us. We're actually in agreement ultimately on a selection. Like I did struggle similar to the first race, but you do like Banbridge.
I do, yeah. No, this is I fully agree with you on the quality of this race, Daniel. It's a phenomenal race. Like you can make cases for all of them. Like El Fabiola was a high class novice hurdler last season. He only just failed to beat John Bonnet Aintree and might have beaten him if he jumped the last better. And his jumping at Fairyhouse was very, very good. Paul Tannen just allowed him flow along in front. He was very good. Dysart Dynamo, again, high class novice hurdler last season, won his beginner's chase by 28 lengths. Appreciated is the logical favourite with Paul Townend up, and he won the Supreme Novices Hurdle. He missed most of last season. He was due to go chasing last season, had a bit of a setback, stayed over hurdles, and only ran in the Champion Hurdle. And then this season again, his jumping has been very good. He's late coming to chasing. He's 9 now. He's just turned 9, but he's a lightly raced 9-year-old, and that was down to circumstance more than anything else. It's delayed embarking on his chasing career. Even San Ra, like he won the Grade 1 race at Leopardstown over Christmas, stayed on well to win. Maybe he can step up and trip going forward. And yeah, when you see Flame Bearer, who was one of the main talking horses at the start of the season when he joined Willie Mullins from Pat Doyle, and you see him at 20-1, that tells you how good the race is. But yeah, I do like Banbridge. Like when he won the Martin Pipe Hurdle last season at Cheltenham, I thought he'd go on and be a staying horse, a staying chaser this season. That's how he shaped on his debut at Goran Park when he won over 2.5 miles. But then they dropped him back down and tripped to 2 miles to run in the Arkle trial at Cheltenham. And I think we discussed this at the time, Daniel. I just thought the trip was too sharp for him, but he won really well. And it's his jumping, isn't it? Like he was only 3rd in the Drinmore last time, but that was on soft ground. I think on better ground, his jumping is a massive asset. He's just such an accurate jumper. And I think he's been a wee bit ignored in the market in the face of, the high profile Willie Mullins horses. So I think at 8.6, I just think that's a wee bit big.
Yeah, fully agree with you. Similar to you, Don, I really like this horse. I put him up as my best bet in Aintree, unfortunately, after his Martin Pipe win, but he's really taken to chasing. Now, you could argue going up to 2.5 miles in the Drimnor, between that and the ground, kind of caught him out a bit. But I think he may not necessarily be a 2-miler, but he may not necessarily be a 2.5. He might be in that little middle section. And for those that know, the Cheltenham Arkle course is a speed test, 1 mile, 7.5 furlongs, whereas the Leopardstown Arkle is 2 miles, 1 furlong. Or the Irish Arkle, so it is a little bit a steeper test, and that finish is quite tough. So I think if he's in and around with the pretenders, I think he will be staying up like a lot of them. And the way the pace sets up in this race, it is set up for a closer. So Charlie, a pace angle that I touched on, one of them is Dysart Dynamo, who is a type of horse that could just bowl out in front, and we'll never see him again until the finish line.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, there's a huge amount of horses that have made the run-in or can make the run-in. I'd be surprised if any of them lead this guy, mind. I mean, he just seems like to be a ball of energy. Constitution Hill in the Supreme was obviously incredibly impressive. But I mean, this lap maybe he would have fallen in a hole, but he was still tanking along when he tipped off 3 out. And his chasing debut at Leopardstown was incredibly impressive. He posted a big RPR figure. He jumped with aplomb. You know, he's sort of dashing front runner. I'd say his run style is way more suited to chasing. And I don't know. I mean, I think it's one of these occasions where Paul Townend might have made the wrong call. Appreciate it's done nothing wrong, but he's looked much. He's won a long way. I feel it's been more workmanlike than Dysart Dynamo, and I just think he brings a huge amount of potential to the table, like a lot of these horses do. But I do think if he gets into an unharried, uncontested lead, yeah, I think he could be very, very good, this horse, in a race full of potential. And again, I'll be surprised if Willie's going to let this become a speed duel between a load of his contenders. El Fabio, Appreciate It. You'd imagine that they're going to make a decision that one of them's going to make the run-in and the other is going to follow. I would have thought. I can't imagine he's going to be thrilled watching the three of them duel it out early doors through the first mile of this race and leave it up for a closer, as you quite rightly say, in Banbridge. So tactically, it's going to be fascinating. But if Dysart Dynamo gets loose on the front end, I think he's going to take a heck of a lot of pulling back.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the most likely that Dysart Dynamo will be at least one of perhaps no more than 2 leading. But I think sitting right behind him, Dan, will be appreciated. So I guess you can see him just sitting behind him, and then with his extra bit of stamina, he won a 2.5 mile bumper. You can definitely get out on top here, perhaps.
Well, yeah, I'm definitely seeing him just sitting in behind the leaders. How many there are is very much up to debate. I mean, there is plenty of pace angles here. If anything can quite go with Dysart Dynamo, maybe it's Flamebearer, who again looked to be very much a precocious front runner in his 2 starts thus far of the fences and ran similarly over hurdles as well. You've got Visionarian, who tried to make all last day as well. There's so much pace in this race, and I think Appreciate Its main asset thus far has just been his cruising speed. Like, he's just a relentless kind of cruiser for his races. I think Paul said last time out, where he's kind of forced to make the run-in, that he'd be crying out for a lead because he does nothing in front, and he's definitely going to get that set up here. I think his jumping is solid without being spectacular, but I'd have no problem with that even over 2 miles, especially in a race that maybe run like this. You want a solid conveyance. I could just see him cruising into it pretty strongly off the back of that strong pace. And look, with Dysart Dynamo, there's still so much untapped potential there. We don't know quite what he is. He could be anything, but I just have a feeling in a proper race like this, I'd be quite amazed if he's able to do what he's been doing to these horses, because these are some high quality animals. And I know Appreciate It's fairly short. Again, it's the Paul Townend choosing him factor, I guess, being a part of that. But one thing's for sure, this is going to be a spectacular race. This is a race I'm most looking forward to this weekend. It might be all season, because this is a proper bust up between. This is basically the Arkle, maybe even a better version come Cheltenham. It's fantastic.
Well, because of the natural.
Nicky Henderson might have something to say about that, Dan.
Well, yeah, I guess it's the fact that here we're going to find out a few things, and already I guess that most of these might not turn up come Cheltenham. Obviously, if John Bond was here, then just cancel it all, because it'd be ludicrous.
Yeah,
but it really would be. That would be the novice to end all novice chases, but it's still going to be some sight.
Yeah. There's definitely going to be a couple of bubbles bursts, which means it'll be a smaller field in the Arkle for sure. So that hands down, this is the best novice chase that'll take place this season, 100%. You can make the argument, just very quickly going through the rest of it. El Fabiola could be the Mullins second string in some way, because Daryl Jacobs always getting that right, isn't he, over Danny Mullins? And then we've made the case for Banbridge. Saint Wa is a closer, the only Grade 1 winner in the field. Phil Dorr beat Saint Wa last time out. And then you've got Flamebearer, who's 20-1. And then Visionary, as I said, who's only touched off in that Grade 1. So fascinating race. You can make a case for any of them, but hopefully one of the lads that's kind of points you in the right direction. We'll move on to the Irish Gold Cup, which isn't as competitive, and we'll take a look at the bettings we currently have on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. Gallopin Des Champs, 1.35 favourites. Statler, 6.2. Some old favourites here in Kenboy, 15.5. Fury Road, 26.0. The Big Dog, 28.0. And any second now an interesting entry here, 34.0. And we'll go through the rest of the field. Franco de Port is 55.0. So yeah, Charlie, I presume it's a no bet here for you with Gallopin Des Champs.
No bet. I mean, I think it would be looking through the field, like you say, there's some real old favourites amongst them, and it'd be disappointing though if he doesn't win this. With a setup to Cheltenham in mind, he's looked for all the world like the potential sort of superstar of this division. He was good, and like he did smash Fakir Duderry the last day, and who's a pretty reliable yardstick himself. You wouldn't mind owning him. Statler, I thought, that laboured on his return at Tremor. He's probably going to improve for that, but he's going to need to. And it's just a race without any real depth for me. And like I say, I'm looking forward to seeing Galopin Des Champs, but I would have thought anything short of a pretty decisive victory is actually going to be seen as a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, Dan, for you?
Yeah, I echo basically what Charlie said there. Looking forward to seeing Galopin Des Champs do his thing from the front. I guess Ken Boy, you'd think normally is the pace angle in these races, but at this stage of his career, it'd be pretty surprising if he was able to live with Galopin Des Champs in the early stages here. I didn't think Statler was that bad behind Menendo the last day. I think he can run a staying on second and not do his Gold Cup chances any harm. I still think he'll be a player come March. The rest of these, obviously, it's hard to just see him living with the early relentless pace of Galopin Des Champs. And I say, yeah, let's hope for a solid performance and something we can really start talking about come the Gold Cup.
Yeah, he could go odds on for the Gold Cup. He's very impressive here. Don, I'm going to make a very small case for Statler, and I will be having a small interest bet. If Statler is going to be Galopin Des Champs, realistically, it would probably be in the Gold Cup trip. But it is a stiff enough 3 miles here, and I think he's kind of got this reputation as a slow horse because he's won the 3 mile 6 at Cheltenham. But he was very quick the way he quickened away in that race. It was good ground as well. I give him a squeak here. Do you at all at the prices around 6-7.0?
Yeah, I would, except that I'd go along with Charlie said that it would be disappointing if Galopin Des Champs doesn't win and win well. But yeah, look, Statler, yeah, they were talking about dropping him down on trip at the start of the season, weren't they? Like going over 2.5 miles, and he won his beginner's chase, I think, over 2.5. But yeah, I thought he didn't do badly at Tremor the last day, over 2 miles 6 against Manila Indo, giving him £8. I thought it wasn't a bad run for his seasonal debut. So yeah, I can see him coming forward from that. He'll obviously be better suited by 3 miles at Leopardstown than he was over by 2 miles 6 at Tremor. And yeah, I can see him running a race. I can see him running well and finishing second. But all things being equal, Daniel Galopin Des Champs, just all he's been doing, the way that he jumps, just looking forward to seeing him again.